there's a lot of fun stuff that both Ellie and Rushi want to share. Okay, so you have the interview. Now what? Who's starting? Who's blue?
So Rushi is blue and I'm purple.
Yay. All right, Rushi.
And we thought we'd do a bit of a lightning round. So we're gonna talk fast, go through our kind of our top kind of standout things, which might seem obvious, but often it's the obvious things that we all miss when we're thinking about interviewing and preparing for the interview. So Rushi, you kick it off.
So number one, prep is key. So it's not just knowing the stories. I think it's also like asking in your network. I reached out to a bunch of people. Actually, some of these people are on this call today, but and asked them like CSMs to interview me. So join the interviewing mock interview channel here. Yeah, in Slack. And then I guess the next one's me too. Get your head in the right space. I actually didn't write this one, so if anyone wants to help.
Ellie, what were you thinking?
Yeah, if you're going into an interview, you got to be on your best game, right? Happy, smiling, energetic, high energy, and especially because a lot of our interviews are on Zoom, we all know how to bring the energy on Zoom, right? You have to feel like you're on stage and feel like a bit of an idiot, and that's probably about the right amount of energy. Because what comes through on video is so much lighter than that. So get in the right headspace, whatever you need to do, run around the block, wave your arms about, be positive energy and just upbeat it as much as possible, especially if it's on Zoom.
And if you do an interview in person, practice sitting down and doing an interview in person. Because
yes,
we might be out of practice for that. And all of a sudden you're like in a room with someone. What's that like these days, right?
You're no longer in sweatpants on the bottom and professional on the top. It's like a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
Sock puppets might happen. You got to watch out for the sock puppets in person. They're bad.
You can't put all of your notes just to the side of where the camera is. Like now
that's what the double screens are for.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the in-person is actually so much harder. So number 3, I love this one. What makes you a special purple polka dotted unicorn? Everybody has something special that makes them stand out, and figure out what your special unicornness is, and be ready to share it and give it to the people. I think sometimes people are if you're transitioning from another industry into CS, people sometimes apologize for that. Oh, I'm thinking about doing this. No, like be confident, show how your previous experience actually is amazing for being a CS person. At my previous company, we hired a former teacher who came in and she just killed the interview so much. She was so awesome and she nailed it. And she was already far, far ahead of like answering questions before I even asked her, because I was gonna ask her like, so you were a teacher, how are you gonna do CS? She was already answering that before I would even ask her. So just think about what makes you really special and stand out and really leverage that.
I'll take the next one. Preparing 5 star stories with impact and metrics. So I didn't quite do the star method, but my method that I did was situation, challenge, results. So I looked at my background, looked at what was relevant for the CS space, like onboarding, difficult like stakeholder or customer conversations, took experiences that I had in the back and from my background and like wrote out those stories. And I think this is really important to do. And we're all going into CS. So I think iterating and like seeing what works, like maybe it might not work with one interview, then I would go back to the story and see like, I need to like fix this story. This, I need to work on it. So creating a Google Doc, having that and like practicing that was really helpful for me. Oh yeah. And metrics. Don't forget the metrics. Like that's really important because I know numbers really matter, especially in this economy.
Yeah, and if you have something on your resume, you need to be able to speak to it. One time I put as a hobby that I did pinhole photography, but I hadn't done it in a while. And someone asked me about it and I went, oh, this is years ago, but still like I wasn't prepared and it was on my resume. If you're going to put something on your resume, you got to have something you can say to it that's short 30 to 60 seconds, and you've got all of the explanation for it, the high points, and especially if it's about what you've done in your job, be sure that you have your metrics down.
Absolutely. Another piece of prep is prep for the obvious objections. So there's going to be something that you're missing in your list of experience and what says in the JD. So figure out how to, they're going to bring it up. So if you're a CS director and you're going for a VP role and everybody else that they're talking to is already a VP, they're going to ask you, how are you going to handle doing this? You've never had this role before. So like, think about what they might ask that will be an obvious objection and just prepare an answer for that. Same goes for, you know, maybe the job is posted for San Francisco, but you live in San Diego and it's not remote. Okay, well, you're going to have to position that because you're not moving. Yeah, you think of those things in advance.
The next one is position yourself for each persona. So for those of you that are like veterans of the tech community, it's probably like a no-brainer, but like for some of us that were like transitioning, I think it's really important to remember who you're talking to on the different personas. Like the ones that I remember are like recruiter, you know, a colleague, another CSM, or someone adjacent, maybe a salesperson or a product manager, and knowing what they want out of that conversation. Like the recruiter wants to make sure that you're going to make them look good. And when they put you in front of the hiring manager, you know, an executive really wants to know that you can think high level and strategic. So just kind of making sure that you frame your conversation according to the persona.
And when you think about the persona, also think about when your persona changes, because if you are currently in a, let's say you're in a director role and you're going for that VP role, all of a sudden now you're not interviewing with just sort of colleague levels. You're going to be interviewing with other executives. What is it like to interview when you're going to be part of the executive team? That is a different interview process. You're going to have different types of questions, right? You want to think about that. In the same way, if you're transitioning into CS, you want to have all that lingo down, right? So think about, how does CSM speak? How does CS executives speak? What do they care about? What should you care about? What should you know that you understand, that you want to convey, right? That's part of it in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to take the know your number and don't tell your number, but Jan, I want you to also give your answer because it was so good when we talked about this. So one tip around your price tag is, if you've been in a company for like 3 probably or 4 years, that if you're expecting to go into another company and like getting the same amount of money, you should be asking for way more because the market has changed. CS has changed. The market changed. Yes, the economy in SaaS, like in tech right now, is maybe not as great as we would like it to be. But there was a time, like a 2-year time period, where people were getting ridiculous bumps and the bumps didn't disappear. So be very careful about what number you're asking for. If you are asking for a number or actually telling what your number is, that it is potentially higher than what you might think it's going to be.
And on that point, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you answer.
Well, I was going to say, on that point, I don't know if anybody has read Never Split the Difference. It's about negotiating, and negotiating your pay is part of it. Why would you give away what you say you want to earn? There's an example in this book specifically where a guy wanted a $30,000 increase to what he was getting paid, you know, in his more recent role. So he went from 80 to 110. Wow, that's amazing. And then he went and got the job, and all of the people that he was working next to, they got 125. But because he said first what his number was, and they said, okay, great. And they paid him 110 when everybody else is doing the same job and getting paid 125. And once you get into a role where you're only getting maybe a 5% increase, it's really hard to get an adjustment of 15K. So you're always behind someone else. Right? So when they ask you, how much do you want to get paid? Then you can say, what's the range for this? And if you're in a state where they have to publish the range, then you know, and you can just talk about, what do you think is you know, like, well, basically what I say is, you know what? I really want to make certain that I'm a good match, and I want to make certain that we're a match. We both feel really good about it. So I'd really like to just explore it more, and we can talk about pay later. That's what I usually say.
That's such a good tip. Next is ask for the close. Some of the most memorable people that I've interviewed have put their selling hat on because they're selling themselves in the interview, right? And they are asking for a close, just like they were an account executive selling software. It's amazing. So some things that you can, and this obviously, if you do the interview and you're like, I would not work for this company, even if they paid me $1 million, maybe you don't need to ask for the close there because you don't really want the job. But if you're in love with the company and it feels like such a good fit, don't be afraid to ask a closing question. So a closing question might be like, hey, like, so how am I stacking up against the other candidates? Like, what are the blockers for bringing me on board? Or like, I'm so excited about this position. Like, when can we take the next step? Like, don't be afraid to ask and put yourself out there. Next, this is for my teaching days, but remember swan swimming. So people tend to be super nervous on calls, but you likely look a lot less nervous than you feel. So don't fret about it. So if you're sweating buckets, if you have a flush, I always wear a turtleneck because if I touch my neck, I get major, like what it looks like hives coming through on the Zoom call, even though I'm not even that nervous right now. As soon as I touch myself, I would get it. So I always wear a turtleneck. So just remember what a swan looks like when they're gracefully going along on a lake. They're paddling like mad under the water, but they're super graceful on the top. So don't stress about your appearance too much in the interview.
I can take the last one. Send a personalized thank you note. This one is really hard for me because I always do it, but then I agonize about it and think about, oh, they didn't reply back or they didn't add me on LinkedIn. And I think like at this role that I'm at right now, like I think only like a fourth of the people actually wrote back. So do it, but don't agonize about it, and make sure it's thoughtful and has something relevant to the conversation you had. But
yeah, I've interviewed tons of people and most people don't send a thank you note. When somebody does, it's actually very memorable and stand out, especially if it's kind of, it is personalized and they talk about what they liked about the session that we had, or just something that makes it does make them stand out and it's appreciated. And in customer success, the follow-up is critical, right?
Okay. Oh, and somebody was just asking Josh Greenstein about the breakout rooms. Yes, what you aspire to be, but if you're transitioning to CS, or I put CX by accident, but if you're transitioning to CS, then you want to go ahead and go into that room. Even if you're thinking that you want to transfer over to being a CS leader, I would still, well, I guess maybe then you can go to CS leader, but most people who are transitioning to CS are going to CSM. Definitely go to that one. And then if you're a CSM, but you're looking to become a CS leader, then maybe you go over to the CS leader one. But if you're a CSM going for another CSM role, then stay in that one. And now I'm going to open up all the rooms and choose which room. Now, you only see 2 rooms, because if you're a CSM going for another CSM role, you're going to stay here with me. And if you're going to the other ones, then go ahead and choose. And Ellie and Rushi, you get to go and choose a room as well. The appropriate one, I think. Do you see, does everybody see it there? The option?
No, I'm still trying to figure out how to do it.
If you go down to breakout rooms, you might
Oh,
see
yep,
it
I see it now.
Okay.
Yay, found it.
All right.
Joining. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. And do we have everybody here? And Ashna, and are you going over to Ellie's then?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the CS
All right.
leaders one.
Anybody
If
else?
you need me, I can stay.
Nope, that's all right. We got Marianne here.
Okay.
All right. And does everybody have a the links there for the notes for the session? Yeah. All right. So why don't we go through and do real quick lightning round? Is everybody meaning to stay here in the CSM room? If not, go down to the breakout rooms and choose either CS leader or transitioning to CS. If you stay here, this is the one for CSMs.
Where's the CS leader one? I'm sorry.
If you go down to breakout rooms, that's where you should see the different breakout rooms, and you can choose. You go and hit join. You bring up,
Oh, there it is.
see that?
Yep, got it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Calling? All right, excellent. Okay, so the assumption here is that you're in some type of CSM role and you're looking for another type of CSM role, or you've been in a CSM role, right? Okay. And why don't we just do really quick lightning round and put your LinkedIn over in the chat. Maria, I'm going to call on you and then we're going to do popcorn. Just real quick, you're a CSM or you're in between roles?
I am a CSM. Well, I was a CSM last year, but I also was the CS leader. So right now I'm kind of taking a small step back to become a new CSM again. So I'm actively looking for an opportunity. Yeah, is there anything else that I need to tell you?
Okay. We're just going to do lightning rounds. And now popcorn, who's next?
Okay, Katie, let's do that.
Hi, my name is Katie Weisar, and I am a current senior strategic CSM, and I'm looking for either a new CSM role or possibly leadership, but I kind of want to stay in this room and hear a little bit about the group. Thanks.
Right.
Popcorn, Debbie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Debbie Sorstein. I am a current customer success manager, and I am looking for possibly my next opportunity, or same thing, like to look at a leadership role, but exploring my options at the moment. And I picked Drew.
All right. Hopefully my audio is okay. I'm a first timer here, so forgive me. I'm just getting all the bells and whistles working correctly. So I have historically been in customer success and account management in healthcare, technology, and in logistics. I recently was included in a tech company layoff. I'm sure you've heard about a few of those happening as of late. So I'm looking for a new CS role, preferably in one of those two industries that I have some familiarity with. All right, cool. I guess next person up. How about Jason?
Hey, thanks, Drew. I'm Jason. I'm from Texas, and I'm also new to the group. Just actually, as a matter of fact, a colleague of mine recommended joining, so I took her advice. I'm also looking for a role similar to other people. I also was let go due to a staff reduction. Wanting to still stay in the CS world. I really enjoyed it. I started out as a BDR thinking I would want to be an account executive, but fell in love with just helping people. And that's kind of where I ended up. I guess popcorn would be Gil.
All right, 3 in a row. First time here myself. Hello, everybody. Gil Song, based out of Chicago. Been in various CSM roles the past 5 years. I've been in tech. Prior to that, I was in the military for quite some time, and then also was an ESL teacher in Moscow, Russia. Got arrested there once. Fun story. I'll tell you about it at a different time. But anyways, yeah, I'm also looking for a new opportunity due to the macroeconomic conditions, as our leadership told us. So popcorn, let's hand it over to Maria. Have you gone yet? Sorry, if you haven't.
Actually, I had, so you can choose.
Oh, my apologies. I'm just like looking at random names in the list here. Genevieve?
Debbie went. So how about Paul?
Okay, Paul, sounds good.
All right. So I have been a CSM for the past, 10 plus years, looking for a new opportunity like some of you others here. Went through a riff a couple months ago and looking for something new. So I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. How about Erica?
Hi, everyone. This is my third time here, so still getting acclimated to CS office hours. But like everybody else's story here, I'm in the market due to mass layoffs. So I was a CSM. That was my role I'm coming from. So I'm actually actively in an interview process right now for another CSM role. So just keep my hands crossed as I continue on the process. So.
All right. Hey, Garner.
Hi everyone, I'm Garner Stewart. I'm currently a CSM in manufacturing and supply chain software who's actually going through a layoff process right now. I might have made this round, but I think it's good to keep my skills sharp just in case I'm next. So yeah, definitely feel for everyone going through that, and good luck to everyone searching.
Awesome. John?
Hey everyone. Dear Johnny here from the Bay Area. I'm a CSM at Legal Technology, and I actually transitioned exactly a year ago. And I'm still looking for ways to improve, keep my skill set sharp, just like Garner, and just continue up leveling myself going forward. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a customer success manager currently for an ed tech company. And similar to John and Garner, I'm just keeping my skills sharp and here to learn something new.
Awesome. Taz?
Hi everyone. My name's Taz, and I used to work as a CSM for a fintech company in the Bay Area. And I'm also currently and actively looking, and it has been a fun journey talking about metrics and talking about bringing this, love and this passion for customer success to companies. So it's been great, but that's about me.
All right. And Nazia and Genevieve, do you both need to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Nazia?
Sure. Hi, I'm Nazia. I have about 8 years of experience in CS in both individual contributor and management positions. Most recently, I was a manager, but I'm looking to switch back to IC, ideally as an enterprise CSM.
Cool. Genevieve?
Hi, everyone. My name is Genevieve. I'm transitioning from tech. I was involved in customer success in tech. I also have a background in educational publishing and education, and I'm looking to land a CSM role, and happy to be here and happy to connect with everyone here today. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Lisa, did you go yet? Oh, good.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Day. I am, my background is mostly CSM as well as account management. And I think there was someone earlier, Drew, he said he was from the healthcare tech space. That's where I've spent most of my career as well. I am currently looking for a new role. I was riffed from my role about 6 months ago, and I am residing in central New Jersey.
Cool. And Marianne?
I am Marianne. I was a New York City public school teacher turned 9-year small business owner. I transitioned to CS and became a CS team lead at a company a few months ago. I too was included in a round of layoffs. I feel like we have a little support group here. So I am looking for another role. Happy to be here with all of you.
Exactly. And I just want to call your attention, in the Slack community, there is a CS chat, it's our CSM chat that's meant for CSMs. Okay, so for anybody, and there's also job search, and then there's also mock interview channels. So if you want to do mock interviews, sign up for that, go and join that channel. If you don't want to do mock interviews, don't join the channel. That should only be if you're actively wanting to do mock interviews. You're going to go on vacation a couple of weeks, drop out of it, and then come back, because there's a little thing that like assigns people. So anyway, all that. So now digging in, there's 3, does everybody have the breakout notes so that we can add in notes as we go? I'll be sure that
I'll throw it in the chat again so you have it.
Great. So then just thinking about that, then the questions we want to cover are: what strategies have been successful? What have you done to help yourself stand out in the interview? And what's the hardest question you've been asked? And I know that right now you're thinking, no, I came here for you to tell me that. But in fact, we all have this for each other. And if we reflect on what we've been through, we'll know some of these answers. So I want you to think about how you can contribute. And I've been a hiring manager in the past, so I can certainly give you some of my perspective. But first, I want to hear from you. When you got your job before, you got a job in the past, right? You were a CSM before. What worked for you then? What was helpful? What did you do to prepare? Yeah, Lisa?
Networking.
Yep.
Honestly, on pretty much every role I've had, especially in the healthcare space, it's a incestuous, we call it, industry. So really my last role was because someone that knew I was looking for a CS role, not a hunter role, more of a farmer position, let me know about the opportunity. And that led to great conversations with folks that were in that organization to understand what they were looking for prior to actually joining the organization, as well as getting a real, snapshot, if you will, of what I would have to do before I even got into the interview process. So that helped me, and honestly, that particular role, they were having several people that were retiring, so they needed to fill it pretty quickly. So that was prior to what we're dealing with right now in the marketplace. This was like 2 years ago, and I got hired in 2 weeks. So it was a very
it was a different time, but you raised a good point. You want to use your network. And
Right.
also, if there's a company that you've identified, you want to get an inside scoop, right? Those are 2 key things that Lisa wrote, and I just added to the notes. Erica, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so when I initially started my first role as a customer success manager, before I broke into that role, I knew I want to enter customer success, and they didn't have like the direct customer success experience. So what I did was I actually reached out to people on LinkedIn that was CSMs and learned from them what was important for a CSM. So therefore, also I asked them like what key things they look for in interviews. So therefore, I'll be able to know how to sell myself in an interview. And when I spoke to people, I learned from one person in particular that helped me significantly. She told me about the implementation, onboarding, and as well as the CSA associate, but I knew I wanted to be a CSM directly. So what she told me was to start with a startup company rather than go for like a large company. So that's how I broke into my first customer success role, was that I actually was strategically targeting companies that had less than 200 employees and make sure I understood the CSM terminology, pain points, and how I could sell myself with my past experiences to help me land that role. And do that, I actually killed that interview so much. I came through the recruiter, by the way. I reached out, I applied through a recruiter. Recruiter set me up with the interview process, and she reached out to me to let me know that, oh my God, that manager really wants you. You did so well. I don't know what you did, but he is asking for you. So I got hired like ASAP. So that was a great strategy for me.
So also then building rapport, right? You want to show that you understand, but also build rapport. And so often when we're in interviews, we think, oh, they asked me this question. I am now going to answer this question. Oh, they asked me the next question. I'm now going to answer that question. That is technically sort of an interview, sure. But what if instead you got into a conversation? What if instead during that interview, they said, well, how would you approach this? You could say, well, in the past, I've usually approached it in the following X ways for the following Y reasons. What about you? What have you found that's been successful for you here? Now they get to contribute. Now you get to have a conversation. Now I'm just making that up. Any question they ask, you can also say, oh yes, this is what I've tried. Have you tried that? Is that successful for you? Anything like that, turn it into a conversation. How would you have a conversation with me or anyone else here? Turn it into a conversation. Help them see what it's like to work with you, what it's like to have you as a colleague, right? All right, Maria.
Okay, so I can speak about 2 things. First of all, is how I got my first CS position. I got so passionate about the mission of the company so that I applied actually 3 times to this company. So, and the first question that I was asked, like, why did you apply? Like 3 times, what is there for you? And one of the strategies that I'm using right now and finding that ideal role for myself is keep track of every conversation and every interview that I have. So it's not just only about like all of the conversations like this that we have together here, but it's also about learning more about the company itself. So once you get the first interview with the HR manager, like just ask them, because it's not only an interview for you, but it's also an interview for them. So they're like, they love when you ask questions like, what is your CS team structure? So that you can learn understand what is the structure inside and how you can fit in. Because otherwise, like I've talked to so many companies, and in every company, the CS structure is different depending on the product. And one of the coolest tools that I use for it so far is called Notion. It's completely free. Like you can create pages there and track all of the conversations that you have. Because people usually ask the same questions on all of the interviews. So, and this is how you can track and rebuild the answers that you had before into the conversation that would be tailored to a particular company. So hope you
and
find
that's great. Besides Notion, another great resource is Teal. If anybody knows about Teal, it's at tealhq.com, and I've put that in in the notes. And they not only will automatically draw in anything you put in, like about a company, it'll pull in information, it's free, and it'll build out sort of a tracker for you, and it has a lot of other resources there. So besides Notion, where you can build a tracker for free, you can also use Teal for free. Gil, what about you?
Yeah, so something very tactical I found that was helpful for interviews was to list out 3 bullet points about yourself that you want the interviewer to take away, right? So to help to control the narrative, you want to end on that high note and maybe really emphasize a big project you worked on perhaps, or an award you received, something along those lines to help you stand down their minds, just because they're probably interviewing many candidates. So things get blurry, right? Especially if they're doing back-to-back interviews. So to really make yourself stick out more, give them that detail that they can stick in their minds.
Absolutely. Also keep in mind though, that they talk to each other afterwards. So if you mention the exact same award, let's say, like, then it's going to seem a little more canned. Whereas like if it comes up naturally, then it's like, oh yeah, he told me about what he did to earn that award. That was awesome. Did you get that story? Like, oh no, I didn't hear the story. What's that story? You know, that sort of thing, right? But absolutely, if you know what your top 3 takeaways are, then they'll get that message, and you want to do that. That's a great way to stand out. Thanks, Gil. Nazia.
I wanted to add something to Lisa's point about networking. And recently, and especially because the market is so competitive, I feel like the best way to get to the top is if you can get a referral at the company. And ways that I've been doing this is by firsthand reaching out to anyone that I might know at a company, either that I'm interested in joining that's not hiring or is hiring. So it doesn't matter whether or not they are, because they could be in the near future, and asking if they're open to scheduling 15 minutes to connect. I preface it by saying something about the company that's interesting to me, you know, just so that they know that I'm invested. And more often than not, I do get a yes. And I've also had success going through first connections to get connected to a second connection, and even farther than that. So that's something that I would suggest. And don't be scared. The worst thing that can happen is that you don't hear back, or that you get a no.
Well, and also a lot of people I know, when they've been networking, they build those relationships, and then people, you know, say, hey, guess what? We are going to hire now. And you hear about it first. That's a great advantage. And then they're putting your resume in for you as well. And so then you're not amongst the 400 or the 1,000 or whatever it is. Now you're something unique, and you've been recommended in. Yeah, that's great. That's you. Marianne.
I think going back to both of your points, networking is by far the best way to get a job. And for my past role that I just was laid off from, I actually met that company at a career fair months previously, and they were looking for architects and developers for Salesforce. And I, at the time, wasn't even Salesforce certified, but I went to the career fair anyway, just to network and meet people. And when they asked me what roles I was looking for, I mentioned I was looking for customer success roles, and they said, oh, well, we don't have anything right now, but we'll keep you in mind for later. And we hit it off so well at the interview that when they had an opening, they ended up calling me to try and bring me into an interview because we just had such a great conversation. So I think going back to your point of letting them get to know you as a coworker, Jan, is key, because you want to work with fun people and people that you'll enjoy working with, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. If they start to have a rapport with you during the interview, they feel like they know you, you're kind of their colleague already. Like that's what you want them to feel like. All right, Drew, let's finish up with you and then bring everybody back together.
Yeah, I just all great comments and love what everybody was saying. I think the elevator pitch is one thing that's important that I haven't really heard anybody mention, but Gil kind of did with the bullet points. Have your minute and a half elevator pitch ready and kind of practice it a little bit so that it doesn't sound scripted, but it sounds conversational. What is your experience? What are you about? What are you trying to accomplish? That's something that I think really helps so that you can hit the ground running on most of your interview calls. That tends to be the first question. Tell me about yourself. A lot of the time.
The worst question, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, go
and
ahead.
then on the resume stuff, these when you're applying for jobs, especially on LinkedIn, I've done that. Last year I applied for 70 jobs. I cast a wide net. I applied for 70 jobs. I got 4 interviews.
More than you had.
That was like, I felt like that was a success when you look at some of these applications online and it shows that the posting has already had 600 applicants. You're like, how the heck am I ever even going to be considered for this role? It's a good fit, but like, I'm never going to get to the top of that 600 person stack. And just think about, you can research this online. There are certain fonts, there are certain formats that are more agreeable than others. You can go get samples of really good resumes online and consider structuring your resume accordingly, because a lot of them are put through an algorithm and all they're looking for is keywords. And if you hit enough of those keywords, then your resume gets to the top of that stack of 600. If they don't, then you might not get it. So think about the keywords in the industries that you're looking to work in and try to fit some of those into your resume with your work experience, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely resumes are the foundation of your story, and it's always better to create your own resume, as hard as that is, because no one else knows your story the way you are. Keywords are key. That's why they're called keywords, and you want to be sure that you are including any keywords generally for the CSM role, but then you want to be sure, and if there's a job that you're really interested in, maybe not in the spray and pray, but maybe when you're connecting with folks, that you put in some of those specific words for job descriptions. When a manager is building out that job description, they want to see that you're connecting with them, that you can satisfy what their pain point is, what problems they need solved for, right? So, all right. And everybody's back. Awesome. How's everybody doing? Was there anything that was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that someone brought that up. I forgot about it. We just at the end, Drew was mentioning just the elevator pitch. Don't forget to have your elevator pitch, right? So we were just talking about that. What other things do we sometimes forget? Somebody says Sandy was great. All right, so Sandy, what was great? Tell us.
All right, so I'll just share. First of all, we had a really great group. It was so interactive. So Fran actually said one of the hardest questions that she got was, of all the things that you've listed that you know how to do, which one is going to be the biggest stretch for you? Mm-hmm. Ooh. Everybody sink in. Let that sink in. And I suggested any type of hard question that you don't quite know, but this is the particular hard one, right? It's basically tell me what's your weakness, right? Yeah. So any kind of hard question, kind of ask interviewers, like, what are you trying to understand from that? like ask them, because you don't really know what's motivating them. Because that opens up an opportunity for them to give you more information about how to answer it. Because if you choose one, and that's the one that's most important to them, to be like, nope, right? So any hard questions, just ask. So what are you trying to understand?
So you say, oh, that's a great question. Tell me a little bit more about that, or how would you phrase that?
I would say, like, what are you trying to understand?
What are you trying to understand from that? And they say, well, I just want to know, what's your biggest stretch?
Do you have concerns about what, like you just kind of go with it, right? But usually they don't expect a question back. That's another thing, right? So now they go like, oh yeah, why am I asking that? Right? And hopefully they will be forthcoming and then share with you what their concerns are, because this is a very technical role, because it's a lot of executive engagement, whatever that is.
Right.
Yep.
And
But
Rushi,
you do have to like answer the question eventually, right? It feels like you're sort of tap dancing and stalling.
Yeah, but you're throwing it back on
too.
them because they're trying to trip you up. So you're basically taking control of the conversation by asking them to clarify. I think it's a great reframe, and it does buy you time.
well, and
I would
Rushi
think
was
of
just
it as
saying,
tricking though. Oh, sorry, Jan, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, Rushi just put in the chat that it's like a discovery question.
Yes.
And if you think about it as a discovery question instead of a stall tactic,
correct,
then not only are you emulating discovery questions, which is a skill that CSMs and CS leaders and everyone in CS should be emulating, right? But it can maybe feel not so much like a stall tactic or an attack or whatever, but it can be like, oh, tell me more about that, because that can go in so many different directions. All right, Genevieve, what do you got?
Yeah, all I want to share here is my initial thought of how I would respond to that would be, I want to make sure that I answer your question as accurately and specifically as possible. Could you elaborate more? And then if I didn't have any, what I call a Dragon Slayer story, which is your list of SAR method, I would want to answer that with a solid story. But if I didn't have one, by practicing them, ahead of the interview, I would say all I know is that I thrive on challenge. So that particular point in my resume, or I wouldn't even use the term resume, but this aspect that would be a harder stretch, I would actually thrive because that's where I perform best. That's what comes to my mind. And I thought I would share that. But if I could answer with a solid story that I pre-prepared for from my SAR or STAR method, I would maximize on the opportunity to wow them with a story there.
And is that what you mean by Dragon Slayer?
Yes, it's a term I've learned from a coach here on Long Island. And I would also try to show them how I can bring value to their company by overcoming, like if I can pinpoint, if I can throw that question back at them and say, is that potentially a pain point that you're trying to overcome? And if they say yes, then I'm going to show how I can bring value to them to overcome that pain point. Because the tougher the question, the greater the sign that that's a pain point that they need you to hire you to overcome. You know what I mean? That's, to me, is a signal,
Right. Taz, what do you got?
I had to just unmute there. I think part of having just a little bit of that time with a discovery question, like Sandy said, is great. But I also feel like most of the time, if it's on my resume, I'm hoping it's not a stretch, and I'm there to show you that this is value that I can bring to your company or to your position. So I would feel like using a story or being very direct to say, I feel like I've done a pretty good job as far as giving you a true picture of my resume or my abilities. But at the same time, if you were to ask me, how fast did I learn something technical? I can give you that example. Or, let's say I'm Salesforce administrator and, that's my certification. This is where I'm at. I hope, the next role I can build on that experience. So in other words, not make it seem like there is an actual stretch on the resume, but that there is value that I've demonstrated over and over again. And whatever seems to be a stretch, I can go over that much faster, much more able, and much more confidently than, let's say, some other candidates might be able to consider.
Nice. Felicia.
So I love this question. I love it for so many reasons because now, Fran, we all get to think about it for one thing. But it's also, to me, it's like anytime someone asks you that question, they really want to know, are you self-aware? Are you ambitious? Are you willing to put in work to learn to do something? And how would you do it? Because you might say, oh, I'm such a great communicator. Well, here's a really good time to exhibit those really strong communication skills and helping them understand how effective you can communicate something. If it's a stretch for you managing or building a team, you could talk about your soft skills or transferable skills that you would use or incorporate in order for you to really leverage what's in place already, and then how you would use some system, community that already exists, something that you have in your wheelhouse that you're willing to pull out of your pocket and then marry with some systems that they have in place. And that tells them, I recognize what you have. I see a gap here. I'm willing to use my skill sets with this. And I also have no problem in learning this because I'm really a good and deep learner, and when you pair it in that way, that allows that person to see, okay, so this is a person that understands, first of all, we have something here, and they also understand they have a stretch or a gap here, and how they work that out is really what you need to be doing and helping them work out their gaps. So they want to see how you process, for that change.
So it's not just tell me about a weakness. It's also tell me about how you work through that and turn it into a strength. And that gives you a story to tell too. That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. Ellie.
Yeah, I had a couple things to add in. I think be careful you don't get defensive. I think asking back a question to say, like, what is it that you're specifically trying to understand? Like, is there something in particular, or are you just trying to uncover something additional? Because there may be something very particular that they're looking for. And I think if they do come back and say, well, we know what your strengths are, we want to know kind of what your growth edge opportunities are, like yourself, you can just take what your biggest strength is, and any strength, when it's overdone, becomes a bit more of a weakness or a bit more of a challenge or growth area for yourself. So you could, if your biggest strength is that you're really confident, well, then if you take the confidence too far, then sometimes you can be an asshole, right? Like, so, not that you would say that in the interview, but like you would figure out what the negative side of that can come out sometimes, or that can be interpreted that way when you might become overconfident. For me, confidence is actually one of my number one things. And when it's overdone, I get up in other people's business and I start going outside of my swim lane, which is not good, right? So, but it's taking advantage of the strength that you've already talked about, and then showing how, when overdone, that can be a weakness or a growth. It's not really weakness; it's a growth opportunity or something to watch out for.
Right. That's awesome. Awesome. So this has been a great session. We're already a couple minutes over. Where did all that time go? It's incredible. I just want to encourage you all to continue the conversation. Every week we meet about these different topics, but there's never enough to really make it exhaustive as much as we go into deep dives. So continue the conversation over the Slack channel. We have a few, well, first of all of the notes, and Shruk has been great about adding a lot of the stuff from the chat over in the notes from today. So you're going to see that in the CSOH session resources and ideas. There's CS leaders chat, there's CSM chat, there's transitioning to CS or transition to CS. Those channels are all great channels to continue. There's a job search, there's CS resources. Continue sharing, just continue sharing, okay? Use each other as resources. You're not alone. You're not alone now when you're in a job search. You're not alone when you get into a job or if you are currently in a job. This is community. We're here to help each other. Okay, so just fantastic session today. Thank you so much for everything each of you contributed. Just, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I really did. Any last things before we go? Bits of wisdom? Rushi, Ellie? I'm sorry to call it wisdom. That might feel intimidating. Rushi, any last thoughts?
I made a mistake and everyone went around the room introducing themselves. So we took so much time doing that. We didn't actually get to a lot of the meaty stuff. So if any of you were in my group, please just Slack me and happy to help and give advice.
So Rushi, are you going to, now that you're all over in the transition to CS channel, then you can set up another meeting where you actually exchange ideas? Something like that. All right. Well, take a look at the notes, take a look at the recording, and we'll see you here next week. We're going to be talking about CSQLs, which is qualifying leads. We're going to have 2 sessions. Next week, it's going to be earlier. It's going to be at 11 a.m. Pacific because our co-lead is over in GMT. So it's going to be evening for her. And then the following week, we'll be back at 4:30. We're going to have 2 different takes on how you should be thinking about CS qualifying leads and how that all relates to customer-led growth. All right. Excellent. Have a great day, a great evening. And thank you so much. Yes, Sandy, let's all do a big wave here.
Hi, everybody.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Cheers.
Good night.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.